شهر الصيام والعمل أبشر إذا ما الشهر حل شهر الرجاء والأمل شهر كريم قد أطل شهر الصيام والعمل.
الحمد لله رب العالمين صلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا ثم ما بعد. First of all, I would like to say Ramadan Kareem to all the sisters who are joining us on this beautiful day of the month of Ramadan. And for some of you, perhaps it's one of the nights of the month of Ramadan. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward you to stay awake and stay up at this time and watch and listen. Inshallah, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make this a beautiful gathering for studying the deen of Allah Azza wa Jal. That this will also count, inshallah, as one of the circles of knowledge on which the angels will descend, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's mercy will shower us, and Allah Azza wa Jal will send down the sakina, tranquility and peace on our hearts, inshallah, in this day and this night, bi'idhnillahi tabaraka wa ta'ala. Again, I would like to say Ramadan Mubarak, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make this a blessed month to all of you. You know how important that is during the month of Ramadan. It's an annual reminder from Allah Azza wa Jal to all of us. You know, as we go on in our lives, and sometimes, you know, we just tend to act like humans as usual, and we tend to forget and make mistakes. Many human beings, usually they really wait for some sort of outside reminder. They need something from outside to shake them and wake them up to the reality of life. So they need something, an external factor to help them change something in their lives. And subhanAllah, even though we had that on a daily basis, such as the 5 daily prayers, but Ramadan is that annual reminder. It's that annual reminder Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blesses us with every single year. So for those who have done great, alhamdulillah, they can now do exceptional. And for those who have done good, they can do better. And those who haven't done much, they can, alhamdulillah, improve, inshallah ta'ala, within those beautiful days and nights of the month of Ramadan. Now, specifically for the sisters in particular, why do we need to have a program such as Sisters of Sunnah, or an exclusive, let's say, channel or gathering or page for the sisters? You know, at the time of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, as you know, the Prophet was busy with the Sahaba radiallahu ta'ala anhum. So he was always with Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, Umar, and other men of the community. So some of the ladies, they kind of felt like they're left out, and they just don't have much time really to learn from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and they don't have that easy access to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It's just not that simple. Every time they want to go and approach him with a question, there will be a lot of people around there, so they might not feel comfortable with that. Absolutely understood. They're very shy, they're very modest. One of the ladies there, her name was Asma bint al-Sakan al-Ansariya, radiyallahu ta'ala anha wa ardaha. And she was one of those very brave and courageous women who would not really hesitate in learning and asking her questions, even if it was in public. So she came to the Prophet ﷺ in this gathering, and she said, Ya Rasulullah, قَدْ غَلَبَنَا الرِّجَالُ عَلَيْكَ, means men, they have just taken all your time. I mean, there's nothing left for us. They go with you to Salatul Jum'ah, Salatul Jama'ah, they go for Jihad fi Sabilillah, they do so many things with you. So there is nothing really much left for us. How can we match them in reward? And the Prophet ﷺ, he gave them just one simple thing. He said, listen, even though it's one thing, but I know it's very hard and difficult for you to maintain and achieve. He said, إِنَّ حُسْنَ تَبَعُ لِإِحْدَاكُنَّ يَعْدِلُ ذَلِكَ كُلَّهُ. That being kind and nice to their spouses, meaning taking care of their family duties, is equivalent to all what they mentioned. So eventually the point here is that this woman, she came and she asked the Prophet ﷺ her question in public. Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha, she noticed that about the Ansari women. They were different from the Quraysh women who came from Mecca. The Ansari women, they have that courage more actually to come and answer questions. So she said, Rahimallahu nisa al-Ansar. May Allah have mercy on the women of al-Ansar. I've never seen women who are more courageous than them when it comes to learning their deen. لم يمنعهن الحياء أن يتفقهن في دين الله. Even shyness or bashfulness was not an obstacle for them to prevent them from learning their deen. So she said about that, what they usually ask their questions about the most private things women would have, such as their menstruating period, about pregnancy, breastfeeding, and so on. So there are so many questions women really need to have answer for. And subhanAllah, even though when it comes to speaking about monthly period or pregnancies and so on, these are very common among women. It's not something new. Every woman would experience that in her lifetime, and if she marries, she would have also the experience of pregnancy and childbearing and so on. So eventually, they will have to go through this. But still, each individual would be unique. Every lady is unique in terms of her case, in terms of her scenario, her situation. So many women, they would love to have at least an answer for what they believe is, specific for them. So that's why when the Prophet ﷺ, he heard that from the women and their need to have some sort of private sessions with the Prophet ﷺ, فَجَعَلَ لَهُنَّ يَوْمًا فِي الْأُسْبُوعِ. The Prophet ﷺ, he gave them one day every week. And he asked them to gather in the house of one of the ladies of the community, and he would attend there ﷺ for them, and he would eventually give them a special and unique address to the ladies and answering for their questions. Also, the Prophet ﷺ on the Eid, which is a very special occasion, of course, the Messenger of Allah ﷺ would usually, after finishing the public address, the community address, he would turn towards the ladies and would give them a very special message exclusively for them and just only for them. So with this, I would like, inshallah ta'ala, to give you the opportunity, bi'idhnillah azza wa jal, following the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, for the sisters of sunnah, inshallah ta'ala, and make this a special session for the sisters. Since it's the month of Ramadan, I definitely prefer that our questions would be around the situation in Ramadan, whatever women have questions about. I'm sure that you have so many questions, very common questions. I don't want really to start, anticipating and giving some information or answering many of these questions, but I want you to ask your question, inshallah ta'ala, and from there we start a discussion, bi'idhnillah azza wa jal. Again, Ramadan Mubarak, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make this a very blessed occasion for you and for your family, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward you for your patience and for attending the session. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala send down the angels upon you, surround you with His mercy, shower you with His mercy and tranquility and peace, inshallah. And with this, we would like to start, inshallah ta'ala, our discussion. Bismillah.
Alhamdulillah, Jazakallah khair for your time again. Okay, our first question, alhamdulillah, is from Sister Yulia. Can I read the Quran during my period? Can I recite it out loud as I'm trying to memorize it? Also, can I go and stay in the masjid during my period to listen to the surahs? And when should I start the janab after period, if it's after the blood or if it's still a brownish discharge?
Okay. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, wa nabiyyina Muhammad wa ba'd. Can you read the Quran during your period? It's like an ijma' of the four major schools of thought, and also a lot of the ulama and the muhaddithin, that women during their period, they should not read the Quran looking for the reward and for the ajr. Meaning, if there is a need for them to read the Quran, then it's okay. For example, if she's a hafilah, she's already memorized the Quran by heart, and if she's maybe over 7-8 days in average until she becomes to review what she memorized, she most likely would forget a lot of the Quran that she returned before that. So therefore, they say for the hafilah of the Quran, she's allowed to recite the Quran, review the Quran, inshallah ta'ala. Also for the teacher of the Quran, if she's a teacher, she teaches tajweed, she's responsible to teach other women or kids and so forth. In this case, it is alright for them to do that, inshallah ta'ala. It's preferable that they hold on the mushaf with a bearer in their hand, or a digital form. If they have to have a book in their hand, and in this case a translation of the Quran, or at least a book that has a translation with that would be fine, inshallah tabaraka wa ta'ala. This is not a physical ruling, it's actually a ritual ruling, meaning it's not about you being physically, let's say, pure or impure, as much as it's just a ritual ruling that during this time, women should not be reciting the Quran. And so based on this, it doesn't matter to recite that loud, or even if you recite that secretly, you should also refrain from that. Another occasion where you are still allowed to recite some of the Quran, if this comes in the form of dhikr, meaning if it's part of particular dhikr. Let's say when you go to sleep, when you go to bed, reciting Ayatul Kursi at that time is not considered eventually from the recitation of the Quran as much as reciting a dhikr for going to sleep, going to bed. reciting the 3 quls, the same thing, in order to blow on your hands and wipe over your body before you go to sleep. That is okay as well. But just to open the Mus'haf or just to recite the Quran off the screen for the sake of taking the reward, or maybe try to finish your khatma during the month of Ramadan, you should not be doing that. Can I stay at the masjid and listen to the recitation of the Imam? Well, if the masjid has a multi-purpose facility, meaning they have libraries, they have childcare facility, offices, or maybe classrooms, you can be in the classrooms away from the musalla area, from the main salah area. You cannot be where the women actually are praying, and you cannot be where, of course, the men or the Imam would be praying. You should be outside that musalla, but you can be in other part of the masjid or the Islamic center. Can you just repeat the last part of the question? I don't remember actually the details of it.
Yes. It says, when should I start junub after period? If after the blood there is still a brownish discharge, how do you know when to do junub?
So basically when she takes a shower? Is that what the question is?
Yeah, she's saying that, how does she know? Is it after she sees the red blood, or is it after a brown discharge? Sometimes the women have brown discharge after it. How do you know when to take the ghusl? Okay. Actually, they take the ghusl when they become completely pure. The normal signs are complete dryness, which means nothing comes out. If they take, let's say, a tissue and they wipe, themselves, they find it comes out completely clean. There is nothing there except maybe for transparent discharges. So in this case, it means they have become pure. And in some occasions, some ladies, they experience some white flakes, basically. So these are the 2 major signs of purity. So whether it's dryness, nothing comes out, or just having some white flakes, in this case, they consider it's a sign of purity. That's when they make their ghusl and they start resuming their ibadat, inshallah ta'ala. As for having traces of blood or brownish color or even yellowish color connected to the period, this is still considered part of the period. At the time of Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha, women, they were concerned about this issue as well. So what they used to do, even ironically, subhanAllah, they used to send their pads or their cotton pads basically to Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha, and they would ask her based on this color, for example, is she pure, can she make ghusl or not? So Aisha, she used to send back to them saying, لا تعجلنا حتى ترين القصة البيضاء, which means don't be hasty, don't rush until you see the complete sign of purity. In this case, it was that the white flakes that she was describing, radiallahu ta'ala anha. So again, if this bleeding or this yellowish color or brownish color is connected to the period itself, the same day perhaps, or maybe the next day right away, it is considered still part of the period, and she should wait until she have complete, inshallah ta'ala, sign of purity. Wallahu a'lam. Now another question, perhaps. Let me add one more thing basically. If once she sees the sign of purity, does she have to make the ghusl instantly and right away? The answer is no, not instantly, not right away, but at her earlier convenience, inshallah, earliest convenience, as long as, of course, before the end of the time of the salah, that's let's say of the day, or even the evening. For example, if she became pure, let's say 2 hours after Salat al-Dhuhr, and she still have 2 more hours until Salat al-Asr, she can delay her ghusl, but she cannot delay until Asr begin. She needs to pray Salat al-Dhuhr because the time of Dhuhr is already in, and she's responsible to make that Salah. Wallahu a'lam. Okay, this next question, I'm just going down the line of what they've typed, and it says, Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh Yasser. Can a person offer a sacrifice just for the sake of offering it out of gratitude to Allah and expect to be rewarded for it?
The answer is absolutely yes. I mean, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said about the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam in Surah Al-An'am, قُلْ إِنَّ صَلَاتِي وَنُسُكِي وَمَحْيَايَ وَمَمَاتِي لِلَّهِ رَبِّ الْعَالَمِينَ. I'm assuming the question is about sacrificing an animal for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So if this is the case, then yeah, absolutely. You should do that. The ayah in Surah Al-An'am, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam that say that inna salati wa nusuki, which means my prayers and my sacrifices, and then here means the Qurban, that is slaughtered for the sake of Allah Azza wa Jal, and then the meat is distributed to the poor. This is all for the sake of Allah Azza wa Jal. The reward is definitely there. And as a matter of fact, some of the ulama, they mentioned that this ayah puts the sacrifice of the animal and distributing the meat for the poor, for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to the poor, for the sake of Allah Azza wa Jal, is one of the greatest rewards, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala associated that with the salah. So they say this is one of the highest actually rewarding acts of worship, inshallah. Now.
Okay, the next question is from Magdalena. She says, my question is really not Ramadan related, but I really have no one to ask. So before yesterday, I was making ghusl and I was praying, but today I noticed that a little small part of the nail polish was on my nails. So what should I do? I repeated already ghusl again, but what about my prayers? Should I redo them, repeat them all, or pray sunnah and ask? It says, or pray sunnah about acceptance?
No. In regard to if someone, let's say they started salah or ibadah, and then they realize that there is one of the conditions of the ibadah is invalid, such as someone starting salah, for instance, and then they realize that the tuhur or the wudu is not valid. Just like in the case of the sister, she took a ghusl yesterday, and then when she started making salah today, she realized that she still has some traces of nail polish on her hands or her fingers. That means her ghusl was not perfect. That means her tahara is not perfect yet. They needs to be removed first, and then you make your ghusl completely. So if this is the case, we have two scenarios over here. Number one, if the salah time is still there, in this case, you should do that particular salah itself, inshallah. So, for example, if she realized that after she made salat al-dhuhr, and there is still about 2-3 hours for salat al-dhuhr to expire, she needs to take a ghusl and redo salat al-dhuhr itself. As for the other salawat that she's done the day before, which is the scenario number 2, if she realized that after, of course, many salawat time expired already, so in this case, these salawat will be valid, inshallah ta'ala, because they were done to the best of her knowledge. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, لَا يُكَلِّفُ اللَّهُ نَفْسًا إِلَّا وُسْعَهَا. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will not overburden you with anything that you cannot bear. Also the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam says, رُفِعَ عَنْ أُمَّةِ الْخَطَأُ وَالنِّسْيَانِ, means the sin, the liability is removed from my ummah because of forgetfulness, because of a mistake or error. So in this case, your situation was based on a mistake or an error that you were unaware of, or forgetfulness. So inshallah ta'ala, it's okay. So for the previous salawat, you should be fine, but the current salah, when you remember that you should take a full ghusl again, you should redo that salah, inshallah ta'ala. In addition to that, it's always open for more ibadah and more sunnah and nafil, inshallah. No.
Alhamdulillah. Okay, the next question is, Assalamu alaikum. I just had my first child 2.5 weeks ago, and the postpartum bleeding starts and stops. Should I make ghusl and pray when it stops, and stop praying if it starts again? If there is brown blood that spots but doesn't flow, I'm confused about when I can pray.
No. First of all, congratulations. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make your child a qurrat ayn, a comfort of your eye and your heart, and to your spouse and your family. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make your child a righteous child, inshallah, that will please you in this dunya and in the akhirah. And also welcome to the club, of course, of parenthood. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make it easy for you, inshallah ta'ala, if this was your first child. Now, in regard to the postnatal bleeding, if the interruption happens within the same day, then you take this all together as one day. So it's basically, let's say, 2 hours, and then you feel that there are a few drops, and then come back again to feel that you're becoming clean, and then another maybe 3-4 hours you have traces of blood and so forth. This is all part of an-nifas, the postnatal bleeding. But if you experience 1 full day of purity and tahara, or 1 or 2 days, tahara, complete full purity, and then you experience few traces of blood, as long as this blood happens within the first 40 days after the delivery, This is the maximum for a nifas period. So it can be less than that. It could be actually 25 days, maybe 30, 31 days, and so on. So it depends. So, but the maximum is 40 days. If this bleeding interruption happens on daily basis, you're still in the postnatal bleeding. And in this case, you should not be making your salah, or you should not be fasting during the month of Ramadan. But if you experience 24 hours, 1 day of tahara, in this case, you should take a ghusl and make salah and ibadah. However, if you experience blood again after that, you need to stop. Because we're not sure if this 24 hours was actually the end of the nifas for you, or it's just maybe another interruption. As long as these drops happen within the 40 days, then in this case, you should, every time you see that, you need to stop. And every time you see a full purity within 24 hours, means you need to wait 24 hours before you make the decision of taking the ghusl, inshallah ta'ala, and you resume your ibadat. But if you see the blood after that, again, within the 40 days, you should stop again. If the 40 days expire and then you see blood after that, this is considered damu fasad, meaning irregular bleeding, and it's not related to, you just need to make wudu for every salah, inshallah ta'ala, afterwards. Now.
Okay, the next question is from Sister Hina. Can we read Quran while breastfeeding?
Actually, this question was asked many times, honestly, to me. And I really searched around to see if there is any particular narration, or even if there is any fiqh opinion in classical works of fiqh. I really couldn't find something to depend on. So I asked some mashayikh. And there is no textual evidence to prohibit women from doing that. Meaning she can still be breastfeeding her child, and she would recite the Quran and have the mushaf on the side and recite from the Quran, or even listen, or even recite, or even from her memory. There is no really prohibition to do that. However, the ulama, they just consider the etiquette. It's a matter of etiquette of recitation of the Quran. It's just a matter of etiquette of the recitation of the Quran. So if you think that this is, you don't feel it's part of the beautiful etiquette of recitation of the Quran, you should wait until your child leaves, or your child falls asleep, and then you recite, inshallah ta'ala, afterwards. But I cannot say it is prohibited, because wearing the full hijab is not part of the wajibat or obligation for you to recite the Quran. You could still actually not having the hijab on and recite the Quran, inshallah ta'ala. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam كان يقرأ القرآن على جميع أحيانه. He used to recite the Quran in all his conditions, all his situations. And one of these conditions, Aisha, she reported that the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he was reciting the Quran, he was laying his head in her lap, radiallahu anha, and she said that he was reciting the Quran while she was on her period. So it means his head was very close basically to her thighs, and eventually, if you want to talk about the place of blood, so that's very close. But it did not affect the recitation of the Quran. It didn't prevent the Prophet ﷺ from being in contact with Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha during that time while he was still reciting the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So I cannot say it is prohibited, but it's just a matter of etiquette. Wallahu a'lam.
Okay, this is from Sister Sophia. Can we read the Quran in like an iPad or a computer without wudu?
Yes, you can do that. You can read the Quran, inshallah ta'ala, without having a wudu. It was reported that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, one time he woke up from his night sleep, which means he was asleep, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And the moment he woke up and the moment he opened his eyes, he started wiping over his face, facing his eyes, rubbing his eyes and wiping his face. And he was reciting from ayat from Surah Al Imran. So the ulama, they say on the commentary of this hadith, that's an evidence that it is permissible to recite the Quran without having wudu. But you cannot recite the Quran if you have a major impurity, such as being junub, meaning that's after, let's say, wet dream, or after intercourse, or maybe during the period. So you cannot recite the Quran. You should wait until you take your shower, and then after that you recite the Quran. The reason is because not having wudu, it's a very common thing. So if we get a mandate that every time they break their wudu, it becomes difficult for many people to remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, recite the Quran, specifically those who might have some issues. So it's okay for them to read the Quran, inshallah ta'ala, without having wudu. But just because having after having intercourse, it's temporary thing, so they can remove that situation, that status, by just taking ghusl, inshallah ta'ala. Wallahu a'lam.
Okay, the next question is, I am very weak at reading the Quran in Arabic. Can I pray along with the iPad or computer along with a reciter?
So basically she would be listening, instead of reading, she would be listening to the Quran. Well, first of all, if we're talking about the obligatory prayer, the answer is no, you cannot do that. Meaning you should do your best, inshallah ta'ala. فَاتَّقُوا اللَّهَ مَا اسْتَطَعْتُمْ, which means as much as you can. If you can recite the Fatiha, alhamdulillah, that's sufficient, because that's the minimum that validates your salah, inshallah ta'ala. If you can recite قُلْ هُوَ اللَّهُ أَحَدٌ, you don't have to jump into Surah Al-Baqarah to enjoy your ibadah. You could still recite Surah قُلْ هُوَ اللَّهُ أَحَدٌ multiple times each rak'ah and make the recitation as long as the recitation of Surah Al-Baqarah. So eventually you can make it that long if you want, by keep repeating it over and over again, every single rak'ah. Should be fine, inshallah ta'ala. Yes, I know that you would like to recite maybe new surahs in your salah, but until you learn, inshallah ta'ala, more, you could still repeat the same surah over and over again. So keep that in mind, inshallah ta'ala. In regard to nafil and sunnah salah, you can hold the mushaf to exercise your salah, inshallah, and your recitation. You can hold the Quran in your hand, or you can hold the iPad. Now, I don't really recommend that you hold the phone unless you just basically put it on flight mode, so it doesn't ring while you're making your salah. Eventually, you can recite from that, provided that you don't listen. It's not like, you listen to recitation. No, it's just you need to practice reading. As for listening to the Quran in salah, you should not be doing that. You can just stop the salah and sit down and listen to the Quran as long as you wish. But in salah, you should read it again as much as you can. If you could not read that many, just concentrate on what you already know until you practice more, inshallah ta'ala. And may Allah make it easy for you. And just to give you the good news, alhamdulillah rabbil alameen, you're already taking actually your reward for everything that you're doing, for your recitation and for trying. The Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam says, الذي يقرأ القرآن وهو ماهر به مع السفرة الكرام البررة. For the person who recites the Quran and he knows or she knows how to recite the Quran in excellent way, they say eloquently, مع السفرة الكرام البررة, they will be مع الملائكة, like the angels, because the angels, they recite the Quran perfectly, the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that's if you learn that with full tajweed. والذي يقرأ القرآن وهو شاق عليه وهو يتتعتع فيه فله أجران. And for the person who recites the Quran while it's so hard on him or her, يتتعتع فيه, which means they keep stumbling and stuttering as they recite the Quran, فله أجران, they have double reward. One, for reciting the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, for every letter you get, inshallah, 10 minutes, بإذن azza wa jal. And number two, for making the effort to recite and trying. So keep trying and earn your reward, inshallah ta'ala, while doing that. Wallahu a'lam.
Okay, the next question is, can I take medicine while I am...
What kind of medicine are we talking about here? You think it's about oral medicine or nose drops, or what kind of medicine?
She didn't clarify.
If we're talking about medicine that's taken basically by mouth or by nose, that breaks the fasting. Meaning, if you're in that condition that you needed to take a medication for that during the day, you should actually break your fast and enjoy the rukhsah, the concession that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given you, so that you need to be strong, inshallah ta'ala, for later. So you should break your fast if you needed to take that medication. And if the medication is taken shots, for instance, or maybe patches on the body, on the skin, or if it was ear drops or eye drops, even though it might bleed, sometimes you feel the taste actually, you can sense the taste in your throat. That's not a usual passage to the stomach, so therefore it would not break the fast, inshallah, unless if you take the IV, basically it's nutritious. In this case, would also invalidate the fasting. Other than that, you should not be taking any medication through the mouth or through the nose, unless it's after after sunset, and you better delay that if you can make your arrangements, since basically you can at least take two, maybe doses, basic one at the iftar, one at the sahur time. So that should be fine, inshallah ta'ala. Otherwise, if you need to take it during the day, then break your fast. If this medication is for terminal illness, this is something basically you have to keep taking on a regular basis for blood sugar, for example, or for blood pressure, or any other maybe terminal illness that requires constant taking of the medication. Again, if you could not take the medication after iftar, then you are excused from fasting. I know it might feel you feel the pain and the guilt not to fast when you see yourself, alhamdulillah, capable of doing that. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one who's giving you this rukhsa and this concession. You can break your fast, and for every day you pay a kafara, which is better to feed one poor needy person. This is for the terminal illness. As for the temporary illnesses, like for example cold or flu, just like in my condition, for example, if you had to break your fast for 1 or 2 days or 3 days, then you need to make up these days after the month of Ramadan, and there is no need for you to pay a kafara or feed the poor for the day that you break. Wallahu a'lam. Now.
Okay, the next question is, can a woman who is breastfeeding fast? If not so, then does she have to make up for them?
No. Absolutely, she can fast. A breastfeeding woman, she can still fast if she thinks she would have the energy to do so. Also, if she thinks that she can have enough milk, inshallah ta'ala, for the child. But if she fears for the child, and she wants to break her fast in order to keep sustaining her body with fluids and so forth to produce a lactate and produce milk, in this case, she breaks her fast, but she needs to make up these days after, inshallah ta'ala, she will wean the child. So when the child now is sustains on solid food and she's no longer needing the breastfeeding very often, she can make up these days, inshallah ta'ala. And I recommend that you do that during the winter season, which is when the day is very short and the night is very long, alhamdulillah rabbil alameen. This is the best time perhaps to make up the days of Ramadan, or the days of, if you could not make any of these days. So you should make up these days later, inshallah. And if the breastfeeding continues until the next Ramadan, you should be fine. You don't have to feel guilty about this. You should continue also. And if you wanted to still continue breastfeeding the child, go ahead, do that. And inshallah ta'ala, after that year, bidnillahi azza wa jal, you try to make up these days. You don't have to make them back to back. Do them at your convenience. Every maybe month you could fast a few days, maybe every week, Mondays and Thursdays, at your convenience again, inshallah ta'ala, until you're able to finish all these days. Some of the fuqaha, like in the Shafi'i madhab, for example, they also obligate that you need to feed the poor for every day that you break the fast because of breastfeeding. So you feed the poor, and you also need to make up that day afterwards, inshallah ta'ala. Now, if this lady, for example, she's for whatsoever reason, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect her, but if for some other reason, the lady, she was unable to fast anymore after that, for whatsoever development happened in her life or her body, if she was unable to make up these days right now because she's not advised to fast at all, that's when the fasting becomes now, the liability for fasting is removed. And in this case, for the days that she needs to make up, she needs to feed one poor per day, so to feed the needy, inshallah ta'ala. Wallahu a'lam. Now.
When you are pregnant and not fasting, can you feed 30 people at one time, or should you give out sadaqah feeding a person every day? And what if you didn't do it correctly in the past? How can you?
Now, if you didn't do it correctly in the past, it's still a liability on you that you need to do it. Meaning, it doesn't mean that I did it, so that's it. No, this is a liability right now that needs to be done because the time doesn't expire for this. You have to do it properly. So therefore, I would say you need, inshallah ta'ala, to make sure that you do it properly this time, bidnillah azza wa jal. Now, should you feed 30 people all at once? If those people are needy and they fall under the category of needy people like fuqara, masakin, and basically the legal recipients of the fidya and the kafara, then in this case should be fine. Can they be one family? Yeah, of course, they can be one family, that's all right, inshallah ta'ala. They don't have to be adults, young ones, it doesn't matter. As long as they're needy people, then it should be fine, inshallah ta'ala. Can I have one individual and feed them 30 times? If you're going to be feeding one individual, let's say in your locality, and you have access to one individual in your family or maybe in the neighborhood, in this case you need to feed them 30 consecutive days, meaning 1 meal per day, or maybe if they need 2 meals every day, 2 meals that will count inshallah ta'ala for 2 needed basically, or 2 days in this case. It's better, of course, to distribute that among as many people as you can, but if this person is in the most need of it, then it should be fine, inshallah ta'ala. Wallahu a'lam.
Okay, the next question is, if there are ministrating women in the prayer area at the masjid, does this affect whether the prayer of the other women in the area is accepted?
It doesn't affect them at all. It's just a liability on this lady that she needs to be out of that place. Of course, if we have a situation like that, I want you to bear in mind that, kindness and politeness, and they can make miracles. So therefore, when you talk to them, you should let them know, because maybe they don't know any better. Or maybe they were misinformed, meaning they were maybe given a fatwa from a different, let's say, a shaykh or scholar or whatever, that told them it's okay, it's all right, because you're going there to learn and learn your deen and so forth, rather than staying at home and so forth. So maybe they were misinformed, or maybe they just don't know any better. So it would be nice if maybe in the right time, inshallah ta'ala, that you talk to them. And in this case, I would recommend, before even you do that, if you can find the alternative, meaning, if the masjid provides, let's say, library space over there, where they have the broadcast of the salah, or maybe they have some other room that they have access to visual, let's say, to the recitation, to the salah, and so on. Try to, first of all, create an environment for them, and then, inshallah, request from them to attend in these places. Also, if the masjid has a live feed online, you can, inshallah, ask the sisters, bidnillah azza wa jal, to stay at home during that time and enjoy their ibadah, inshallah ta'ala. I recommend that an article that was posted on Friday that I wrote recently to muslimmatters.org. If you haven't read this article yet, go and visit muslimmatters.org. The recent article I wrote there is My Dear Ramadan Stay-at-Home Mom. Check it out. It's about this situation. Should women come to the masjid? Should they stay at home? And if they do, how should they feel about it? Is it okay? Should we encourage them, discourage them? Check it out, inshallah. Again, it's on muslimmatters.org. Now.
Okay, the next question is, regarding the question that you were answering earlier, if I see there is no blood coming during Asr time, do I have to take the ghusl right away and start my prayer?
Well, if this is her sign of purity, if she knows that this is a sign of purity for her, and she's sure that the whole period is over right now, then she needs to actually make her ghusl before Asr Salah, so she can make Salat al-Dhuhr, because now the time is for Dhuhr. But if she last time she checked was right before Asr, and she still saw some traces of brownish color or yellowish color, then in this case she still doesn't need to make that ghusl. But then maybe an hour or so later, after Asr started, she finds that the sign of purity. In this case, she needs to make ghusl at her earliest convenience and make Salat al-Asr before the time expires. As for Dhuhr Salah, time expired for Dhuhr Salah, she's not obligated to make that Salah. Wallahu a'lam.
Can I get IV fluids while fasting? Also about praying, it's difficult for me to make wudu and keep wudu because my arms is bandaged.
Okay, for the first question, yes, they can, and doesn't break their fasting at all. As for the wudu while fasting, said if they have wound and they have bandage on the wound. The second part of the question?
She didn't say, she just said that it's hard for her to make wudu and keep wudu because her arm is bandaged.
Okay, if she cannot make wudu and it's very hard for her, then she can take the rukhsa of doing a dry ablution, meaning she can just, if she, let's say, if she has access to earth or to dirt or even to the floor, she can just, with both hands, she can strike on the floor, on the ground, or even the wall. As a matter of fact, she could even do that, and then just blow off the dust, wipe over her face once, and then have both hands, or one hand if one of them actually is in, let's say, in bandage, then that would be sufficient for her, inshallah ta'ala. However, if she can make the wudu and it's only a partial area of the arm is covered, she needs to make the wudu basically as much as she can and stay away from that hand. Meaning she doesn't have to wash that hand or wipe over that bandage at all. She should be fine, inshallah ta'ala. Wallahu a'lam. Nah.
Okay, the moderator told me that she is still, the question that the sister had asked is she is still in the hospital and hard for her to go to the bathroom.
Then in this case, this is called Salatu Faqid al-Tahuran or Ghayr al-Qadir al-Tahara. This is the purification of someone who is, or the prayer for some, or salah of someone who is unable or incapable of reaching out to the water making tahara. If she could not move out of her bed, she doesn't even have to make tayammum, because if she's unable even to reach to the wall or even to her bed or to the floor, she just can make that intention for the tahara, inshallah ta'ala, and she can pray in the condition that she is at. So basically this is called Salat Faqir al-Tahurain. This is the salah for the person who is unable to do either one of the purification acts, meaning using the water or using the dirt or dust for making tayammum. In this case, at her, inshallah ta'ala, in her condition, she just can make her salah and inshallah should be fine. Wallahu a'lam.
The next question, Jazakallah khair, dear Sheikh, do sisters get the reward of Hajj and Umrah for praying Fajr at home, then sitting till Shuruk and praying 2 rakats? And also, is it easy for a woman to attend the nearby masjid, or is it still better for her to pray at home?
Now, regarding the reward for Hajj and Umrah, this is referring to Hadith al-Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. من صلى الفجر في جماعة ثم جلس يذكر الله حتى تطلع الشمس كان له أجر حجة وعمرة تامتين. If anyone prays Fajr in Jama'ah, and then this person stays in his musalla, the place of salah, making dhikr and dua, reciting the Quran and so forth, until the sunrise, and then they pray 2 rak'ah, they will get the reward of Hajj and Umrah complete, inshallah ta'ala. The reward only, of course. Now, that of course, as the hadith says, you should be praying for in Jama'ah, in the masjid, and you stay in the same spot where you pray, you stay there until the sun rises, making dhikr, of course, not checking emails on your cell phone, but making dhikr and ibadah until the sun rises. Now, this is, of course, as you hear from the hadith, is for doing that in the masjid. Does it apply for sisters who make their dhikr at home? Bidnillahi tabaraka wa ta'ala, I hope so, because the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he preferred for women to pray at home instead of praying at the masjid, and the reward is guaranteed for them, inshallah ta'ala. So if they maintain the same tradition and the same act of worship, I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to reward them immensely for that. As a matter of fact, some of the companions of the Prophet, the female companions of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, one of them was his wife sallallahu alaihi wasallam. She used to do that, meaning she used to pray Fajr, she stays in her place and she's making dhikr until the sunrise. One time the Prophet ﷺ, he saw, I believe it was Salama or Habiba, I'm not sure, she prayed Fajr, she sat down and she just made dhikr, she started making dhikr. The Prophet ﷺ, he left her, and when he came back the sun was already up and she was still in the same spot making dhikr. And he said to her, he said, you've been doing all of this and since then? She said, yes, Ya Rasulullah. So basically she was making that dhikr and that ibadah. The Prophet, of course, he gave her a dua that is equivalent to that, but the point is, she eventually was sitting there making that dhikr and that ibadah, and I hope inshallah she will get that reward bi'idhnillahi tabaraka wa ta'ala. The other question is about attending the masjid. Is it better for them or not? Again, I would refer you to read that article on muslimmatters.org. Muslimmatters.org, my dear Ramadan stay-at-home mom. It also has some references to this issue. Should women go to the masjid and pray, or should they stay at home and pray? It's better for them. For some women who don't have access to any spiritual experience, besides going to the masjid, perhaps it's better for them to go there so they could keep their iman alive. For many women who have other alternatives, other experiences, they have, mashallah, very strong, let's say, sister support group, they have activities, programs, halaqat in houses and so forth. In this case, I would definitely say they're better for them to pray at home, inshallah ta'ala, and enjoy their reward bi'idhnillahi tabaraka wa ta'ala while they're at the comfort of their house. Wallahu a'lam.
If a sister delayed her salat for an hour after the adhan, but started her period within that hour, does she make that prayer?
Now, the correct opinion is that she doesn't have to make up that salah after she becomes clear, inshallah, and pure. The majority of the fuqaha, by the way, I have to note that they say she still needs to do that, because when she became actually now excused, that salah time has started and she become liable for that. Wallahu a'lam, the correct opinion that she's not actually liable to do that because she delayed the time, she delayed her salah within a window that was given to her by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this is called wajibun muwassa'. It's an expanded obligation or time for that obligation. So whether you do it at the beginning of that time, in the middle, towards the end, it's up to you. So if she decided to delay it a little bit and then the period started, she doesn't have to make that salah. The only time when she becomes liable and obligated to make up for that salah, if she delayed that salah way until right before the end of its time. So if there was, let's say, last 10 minutes, and then her period started, in this case, she's still obligated to make that salah, because even if her period did not start, she would still have been obligated to perform that salah and that ibadah. So that's the only scenario where she needs to make up for that salah. Wallahu a'lam.
Assalamu alaikum, Shaykh. What is the proper way to perform ghusl?
The proper way to perform ghusl, there are two methods to do that. There is the minimum and there is the preferred. The minimum is basically what you really required in order to make ibadah permissible for you to perform. So that is the minimum what you need to do. It's just to let the water run over your body, rubbing your body, basically making sure that the water reaches everywhere, particularly under the arms, basically under behind the knees and between the toes and the fingers, and so making sure that it also goes through the hair and the face and behind the ears. As long as you make sure that the water runs over your body, it's very simple for us to say that living in the West, when alhamdulillah the water gushing easily from your shower and so on. But for some people, just the experience of the shower itself is actually is difficult. They have to pour water over their hands and so on, so it might be difficult for them to do that. So that is now the easiest way. It's basically the minimum. If you have the water running over your body completely, you should be fine, inshallah. That's the minimum. However, the preferable performance of the wudu, of the ghusl, was narrated in two stories of Hadith Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha and Maymuna, the wives of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Two separate incidents when they watched the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam as he was taking shower with them. Basically, they were taking shower together. So they both described the way the Prophet ﷺ did that. She said the Prophet ﷺ, after he relieved himself, which means you begin first by using the bathroom or the toilet, and then you wash your private parts, and then you clean your hand. Then she said the Prophet ﷺ, of course the Prophet back then, he rubbed his hand, she said, on the floor in order to clean his hand from the filth. And then he started making wudu. So he made full wudu, just like when you do your regular wudu. And after you finish your wudu, the Prophet ﷺ, he had 3 handfuls basically of water, one at a time over his head, one, and then 2 and 3, and after each one of them, after each time, he would rub his head, ﷺ, his hair, making sure the water reaches to the roots. And for the ladies, of course, because you have, mashallah, perhaps you have long hair, making sure that the water reaches to and not just to the root, also all the way actually to the hair. And then after you do that, then you start by putting the water on your right side. So from the right side, the front and the back, all the way to your feet, close to your feet. And then on the left side, from the right, from the front, and then from the back, again, making sure your arm and your hand, all the way to the back as well until the feet. And when you're done, you wash your feet, making sure the water gets between your toes. And then finally, just a final, basically, I would say maybe a quick shower, or maybe just to put some water over your head once again, and making sure that you cover your head and your face with that. Wallahu. So this is basically the preferable acts of ghusl of the Prophet ﷺ, the way Aisha described and Maymuna described the Prophet ﷺ making that ghusl. But if you don't have time, for example, maybe you're in a hurry, maybe you want to go out, maybe you're going to watch it, you want to catch up the salah before the time expires, then you can just do the minimum, inshallah. Is there a difference between taking a ghusl because of becoming pure from the period, and taking a ghusl after, let's say, having a relationship with a spouse after intercourse? Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha, she distinguished a slight difference over here. The difference here is that taking a shower from after being junub, after intercourse, for example, after having a wet dream, if women braided their hair, so if they tie their hair, it's already braided, they don't have to untie these braids and the hair. They don't have to untie that. That's because this might happen frequently. But if she's going to be taking a ghusl because of becoming pure from salat, from the period, in this case they need to undo their hair and making sure that they wash their hair completely. Wallahu a'lam. Now,
on the topic of ghusl, if a sister is has the intention, she knows the prayer is coming up, and she has the intention of going to make wudu, but she needs to take a shower anyway just for the fact of being clean. Is the shower sufficient, or does she have to make wudu extra?
Yeah. For the majority of the fuqaha, there is no doubt that the shower is sufficient. Some of the fuqaha, like Imam Shafi'i, rahimahullah ta'ala, like they still mandate that you make wudu separate from the ghusl. Wallahu alam, the correct opinion is that you do not have to make wudu in order to make your ghusl valid. So eventually, they say that basically al-ibadah al-sughra tadkhul tahta al-ibadah al-kubra, which means the minor purification will enter under the major one. So when you make ghusl, it covers the wudu as well. So it should be fine, inshallah ta'ala, when you do that. Even if it was just to refresh, even if you take a shower because you feel, let's say it's hot, so you're going to take a quick shower, even when you do that, but you make your intention also to prepare for salah, that would be fine, inshallah ta'ala. Wallahu a'lam. Nah.
Sheikh, this year I work full-time and I get home around 7:30. This year I have not been able to make it to Taraweeh, nor do I have the willpower to stand long at night as other years. Can I still get reward in Ramadan for my other deeds without praying Taraweeh?
Well, Salatul Taraweeh is not mandatory. It's absolutely highly recommended that you do Salatul Taraweeh. The Prophet ﷺ said, من قام رمضان إيمانا واحتسابا غفر له ما تقدم من ذنبه. يعني whoever performs Qiyamul Layl, Taraweeh is Qiyamul Layl as well, the night prayer, during the month of Ramadan, Allah will forgive them their sins. غفر له ما تقدم من ذنبه. SubhanAllah, last night Sheikh Umar Sulaiman was actually a guest in our masjid. So he gave us this beautiful reminder, perhaps maybe you've heard from him as well, is that, the hadith, it depends on how much you really need that forgiveness. This is how you gauge your thing. I know you would say you get exhausted, you get tired, but sometimes if you look at the positive side, which means if you look on the other side of it, which is basically how much you really need that forgiveness, you're going to make that effort and make that sacrifice. The Prophet ﷺ, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told him in Surah Al-Sharh, which is one of the short surahs in the Quran, أَلَمْ نَشْرَحْ لَكَ صَدْرَكَ ووضعنا عنك وزرك الذي أنقض ظهرك ورفعنا لك ذكرك فإن مع العسر يسرا إن مع العسر يسرا فإذا فرغت فانصب وإلى ربك فارغب. In the end of the surah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaking to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, فإذا فرغت فانصب, which means when you're done, when you finish, and that he was talking about his duties outside the house. When you finishing what? He would be going out making da'wah, inviting people, struggling and doing his best, enduring all the difficulty and hardships and in delivering the da'wah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When he comes back, what do you expect Allah to tell him? To take a rest and enjoy a break eventually. But it's not the case. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling him, when you're done, فَإِذَا فَرَغْتَ فَانْصَبْ, you need to now stand, and basically the word fansab comes from a nasab, which means fatigue, which means now you need to put yourself to fatigue. How is that? That what you've done before is for the people. Now what you need to do is for you. So eventually, if you need really to have that energy, you need to have that inshallah ta'ala spiritual battery charged, then you need to make that effort. Besides, that's a spiritual muscles exercise. The more you exercise, the stronger you become, inshallah ta'ala. If you always reach your limit and then you start now saying, this is too much for me, you start to break it down, then you become lazier and lazier and lazier, and eventually you will never actually get to the level that you aspire for. But if you start getting here and you start feeling tired, instead of going one step down, you need to take it one step up. That's what I recommend for you, inshallah ta'ala. I know perhaps it's very hard. However, you don't have to do 20 rak'ah. You could do 10, you could do 16, you could do 12, you could do 8, you could do 4. Eventually, don't stop making qiyamul layl. At least before you go to bed, you could do that. Or try to wake up half an hour before Fajr, so that you're going to be waking up for suhoor anyway. In this case, we make wudu, pray 2-4 rak'ah, inshallah ta'ala. But just don't miss the opportunity of forgiveness for the month of Ramadan, inshallah ta'ala. It's only 1 month a year. So take inshallah the opportunity and do that. Wallahu a'lam. Now.
When is the best time to make dua before you break fast? Before you break fast or after you break fast?
The best time to do that should be right before you break your fast, because this is the time of, it's called al-asal in the Arabic language. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned the Ibadur Rahman, the righteous ones, and the people who remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they always remember Allah azza wa jalla bil-ghuduwi wal-asal, early in the morning and also in the late afternoon. So that would be right after, that's after Asr, and that the best time for the dhikr would be before the sunset. So eventually when you're sitting there in front of your meal, you make your dua inshallah ta'ala, and also as you break your meal inshallah ta'ala, break your fast, you can still make that dua. The dua is, of course, there's no specific time for it. But if you're specifically asking about at the time of breaking the fast, this is the best time inshallah ta'ala for it. Wallahu a'lam. Now.
A question on the night of power. If a sister works full-time job and she can't stay up all night, how can she gain the reward of the night of power?
Take that day off. That's my recommendation. I mean, it's one night a year. It's not going to break your back. The schedule might be difficult for you, but I guess if you really care about that night so much, you should do your best, inshallah ta'ala, from now to take that day or 2 days off, let's say, to make sure which night would it be, inshallah ta'ala. Do that. As a matter of fact, I know people who take the last 10 days off so they can make i'tikaf in the masjid. And they're also professional people, they have full-time jobs and so on. So I would recommend that you take that day off, inshallah ta'ala, so you attend the night and then relax and rest, inshallah, for the day afterwards. Wallahu a'lam. Now.
I started birth control pills and it gave me some spotting, and it also messed my periods up. I am getting periods after 1 week of my regular periods. It stayed for 6 days. I took Ghusl, started prayers, and after 1 week of prayer, I got my period again. What do I do about praying in this case? It's literally 1 week of the periods, 1 week of, it says Paki and then periods. Should I continue praying in these days when bleeding?
Okay, now my question is, does she still have her regular period, or this bleeding is in place, or this spotting happens now for 6 days in place of the regular period that she used to have before she took these pills? If she still has her regular period during her regular time eventually, even if it was spotting, then she needs to stop making salah and siyam during those days. And the extra spotting that happens after that, it becomes irregular bleeding. She needs to take her shower and then, of course, goes back to resume her ibadat, fasting and praying and so on. But if her regular bleeding stopped, and then instead, in place of the regular bleeding, now she's having 6 extra days afterwards in spotting instead of the regular bleeding. If these days are actually 6 days, 7 days, which means they happen again the same time that she used to have for her period, most likely this is the new period that she has earned because of that. So this would count also as her period. She needs to stop. She needs to stop for these 6 days of the spotting. Wallahu a'lam.
Can you have acupuncture while fasting?
Yes, there is nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with having acupuncture, again, unless they inject not a medication, eventually nutritious, basically, medication, and this should be avoiding that. Wallah.
Is it allowed to take birth control pills in Ramadan to stop your period so that you can fast the whole month?
Yes, you can do that. However, there is no guarantee, which means if it messes up the period and you still see blood during your period, it is still considered your period, just like I answered the question before. And even if it's your first time, even if this happens for your first time, you just took it for the first time right now, this month, and then suddenly the bleeding starts happening, let's say, still spotting eventually. Just like I said, if this spotting is within your first period, within your regular period time, it is considered period. You should stop making salah and fasting. And if it happens after the regular period, with the regular period, the extra is considered irregular bleeding. You should not stop from salah and fasting during those days. But if you had nothing in your period, and then after that you start seeing the blood within those 6 days, in this case it's also considered a period, you need to stop. But if it's more than that, eventually it becomes irregular bleeding. But the point is, it's permissible for them to use them, but if they still plan the spotting, it is still considered a period you need to take the same ruling for. Wallahu a'lam. No.
Okay, the next question is, we had a reverted sister who became widowed this week, and she has very, very young children and needs help, and she has debts. Are we allowed to give our zakat funds from other Muslims to help her?
Our condolences to the sister, inshallah, her family, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make her situation and provide for her from His mercy and His ni'mah immensely. Now, if the lady in a situation just like you described, and if she's not capable basically of taking care of her finances on her own, in this case, yeah, the zakah, she becomes an eligible recipient, and you can give her your zakah, inshallah, tabaraka wa ta'ala, for this month. Wallahu a'lam.
Okay, the next question. Can you taste the food that you are cooking while you are fasting?
Yes, you can. You can taste the food while cooking, provided that you still spit it out after you taste it. You don't swallow this. You just basically you spit it out. How many times? How often? Now, you need to be moderate. I mean, the Prophet ﷺ, even in wudu, he suggested that when you make wudu, he said, ﷺ, "Baligh fil istinshaq illa an takuna sa'iman." When you make your wudu, you need to exaggerate in cleaning your mouth and your nose, meaning you rinse your mouth and you blow your nose. You need to exaggerate, meaning make sure that it's clean. Illa an takuna sa'iman, unless you're fasting. So even something such as wudu, we need to be moderate when we make our wudu, when we rinse our mouth and then blow our nose in wudu. So when it comes to also tasting the food, I would say it's even more important that you take extra precaution and spit it out after you taste the food. Wallahu a'lam. No.
What are the rulings regarding fasting during pregnancy and the ruling if you vomit during fasting?
Now, if you vomit during fasting, it doesn't break the fast unless the person forcefully does that. Let's say the lady, she feels queasy and she's not feeling good, so she puts her fingers in her mouth and she throws up. In this case, she breaks her fast and she needs to relax and inshallah ta'ala and take some rest. Bidnillah azza wa jal. Women are allowed to fast during their pregnancy unless they fear for themselves or for the child. So if they fear for the child or for themselves, they need to break their fast, inshallah tabaraka wa ta'ala, not feeling guilty at all. They need to break their fast and they need to eat. It's not just like they break their fast and just feeling guilty about it and not eat anything. No, they need to break their fast, they need to eat, they need to sustain themselves with fluids for themselves and for the child, inshallah ta'ala, and they make up for these days after bi'idhnillah they deliver the child and after they stop nursing the child. Wallahu a'lam. Nah.
Okay, the next question is, a sister had a miscarriage and the fetus was less than 81 days. She's bleeding. Should she fast and pray?
Okay, it was less than 81 days, you said?
Yes, it was less than 81.
Yeah, because the 81 days, this is actually the period that the majority of the fuqaha, they put as the limit for distinguishing between a full delivery in order to consider the blood that comes out as damun nifas, which is basically the blood that requires women to stop making salah and fasting, postnatal bleeding. Or they say if it was less than 81 days, this is considered damu fasad, which means it's just like cleaning blood. It's not the blood that prevents women from making their ibadah and their regular salawat. Now, this is the classical opinion in books of fiqh, and I support that opinion as well, because the vast majority of our fuqaha, they follow that. So therefore, if it's less than 81 days, it's considered damu fasad. So she still can fast, and she should make her salah, unless if she is bleeding profusely, and in this case she might feel dehydrated if she doesn't sustain her body with a lot of fluid and a lot of water. In this case, she needs to break her fast for that reason, and she needs to make sure that she keeps herself, inshallah ta'ala, in check and making sure that she doesn't lose too much blood. Wallahu ta'ala. There are some contemporary actually opinions. I read just recently, as a matter of fact, I read a discussion on the subject, and some of researchers, they suggest that with new medical technologies and so forth, they don't really make difference between 50 days, 40 days, 30 days, or 81 days. So they say whatever blood that comes after miscarriage is still considered damun nifas, because the purpose is the same, which is clear the womb and making sure that all the blood comes out and so on. Wallahu alam, I still hold on to the traditional fiqh opinion that has been issued by the majority, the vast majority of our fuqaha, that 81 days is basically the line that you draw between postnatal bleeding and damul fasad, that irregular bleeding. Now, why do they say 81 days? This is taken from hadith Abdullah bin Mas'ud radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, when the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam says, "Inna ahadakum yujma'u khalquhu fi batni ummih 40 يوما نطفة ثم يكون علقة مثل ذلك ثم يكون مضغة مثل ذلك." Says that each one of you, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, put your creation together in the wombs of your mothers in the form of, first of all, he says, alaqa, nutfa, which is basically a drop of sperm, for 40 days. So that's the beginning of the formation, basically, of the fetus, for 40 days, and then 40 other days after that, called alaqa, which is a clot of blood, so becoming now reddish and bloodish, which is the beginning of the formation of the body. And then another 40 days, then the Prophet ﷺ says, ثُمَّ يَكُونُ مُضْغَةً, like a piece of chewed flesh, which is basically the size of a morsel of food. And that's when the spine forms and the head and all the stuff, and so it becomes almost like getting to become complete. So that's when the child is considered like a complete formed human being. So the first 40 days, the body is not yet formed completely, and that's why they say below 81 days it's not formed. After that it's formed, and therefore it's considered like a full pregnancy almost. So if she gets a miscarriage, in this case it would be considered like damun nifas and postnatal bleeding. Wallahu a'lam. Now.
Before I ask another question, I just wanted to make sure, I know it's been over an hour and you're not feeling well, and we still have several questions, and I just wanted to ask you if you feel okay to continue or if you want to stop.
Let's take, let me just take the time actually. Okay, so we'll take 10 more minutes inshallah ta'ala until 3:30 our time here, for 4:30 Eastern inshallah. 10 more minutes inshallah, okay. Whatever questions you have now.
Okay, I'll just continue in the row that we have until 3:30, inshallah.
Yeah.
Okay, the next question is, if you get your period while fasting, do you break your fast right away, and does your fast count, or do you have to make it up?
Actually, once the period starts, your fast is already broken, meaning even if you don't eat anything, if you don't drink anything, it doesn't count. That's it. Even if it was, and I'm sorry to say that, Danny, even if it was in the last few minutes before sunset. So if it was in the last few minutes before sunset, that day would not count. So if a lady knows that she's going to have her period in this day, she knows that it's going to start somewhere after Asr. Does it mean that she can break her fast from the beginning of the day? The answer is no. You should not break your fast at the beginning of the day, because you don't know. You might not actually have it until after sunset. Allahu Ta'ala alam. But once the blood comes out, the blood starts coming out flowing, in this case, or once you have the first spots eventually, then the day is over. You should break your fast. And you should break your fast, meaning you should eat and drink. It's okay. You can eat, drink normally. It's preferable that you keep the course privately so that you don't confuse, people around you, specifically young ones who might not understand the situation. So just eat and drink, and you should be fine, inshallah, tabaraka wa ta'ala. As for the day that you did, may Allah reward you for it, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make it easy for you. Now, let me reverse the question right now. What if a lady, she becomes clear from the blood during the day? Let's say after Dhuhr, she checked the last time after Dhuhr, she found herself, clean. Now there is no more blood. That means she's over. The period is over right now. Should she stop eating or drinking? Should she fast that day? The answer is no. You don't have to fast that day because it's over. The day is from the beginning. It doesn't count. So you can still eat and drink, inshallah ta'ala. You still can eat and drink for the rest of the day, inshallah ta'ala, until the sunset. Wallahu a'lam. Nah.
Next question. I can't fast due to an illness. My question is, we live in a small town with very little Muslims that I personally don't know. I cannot find a poor person to feed since I'm not fasting. Is feeding my husband count as feeding a person? And if not, what can I do? Should I send my money to another city for iftar? Here in Masjid, there is no iftar.
No, well, I would say I wouldn't really count. I know that zakah is allowed for women to give their zakah to their husband. I'm not sure about the kafara in this regard specifically. If the money that comes from the food is earned by the husband himself, yani. If it's her money, that might be considered. However, I would recommend that you give it away somewhere else, inshallah ta'ala. May Allah reward you for that. You can go online and check one of these big Islamic charity organizations, such like Islamic Relief, Amud Foundations, other organizations, inshallah ta'ala, and inshallah hopefully make sure that in the memos that you mentioned that it's considered kafara or fidya. And I know that in some of their options, sometimes it's considered fidya, so they know it should be going into feeding the poor. Wallahu a'lam.
Next question. I have trouble reading in Arabic, and when I'm at the masjid, I try to pray in Arabic, but when I'm by myself, can I pray in English where I can understand?
When it comes to the salah, you need to recite Surah Al-Fatiha in Arabic. The Quran needs to be recited in Arabic. The basic dhikr such as Subhan Rabbi al-Azim, Subhan Rabbi al-A'la in ruku' and sujood should also be mentioned in Arabic. But if you would like to make dua, supplication and invocation in your sujood, you can make it in your native language. So the Quran needs to be recited in Arabic. This is the wajib, inshallah ta'ala. And if you could not do that, may Allah make it easy for you. Inshallah, until you learn, until you practice bidnillah azza wa jal, I recommend maybe to hold again the mushaf or whatever you want to recite of the Quran, inshallah, in your hand. As you do that, if you couldn't recite behind an imam, just do your best. At least just stand with the imam, inshallah, move with the ruku' and sujood. But again, you just need to recite in the Arabic the basics. The Quran in the salah should be done in Arabic. The saying Subhan Rabbi al-A'la, Subhan Rabbi al-Azim, that should be said in Arabic. And then the rest of the dua, if you want to make dua and supplication, invocation in sujood, you can still make it, inshallah ta'ala, in your native language. Wallahu a'lam. Now.
Can you please clarify again, can a woman on her period recite Quran from memory? Jazakallah khair.
Women on their period can recite the Quran if they were huffaz, if she was memorizing the Quran, she memorized the Quran and she's afraid she would lose what she memorized. So she reviews what she already knows by heart to avoid forgetting her hifz. That's number one. Number two, if she was a teacher, if she's a teacher and she teaches children, she teaches other women, in this case, she needs to recite the Quran to help them out and teach them the Quran. That is fine, unless she can take that week off. That's different. Or maybe substitute for another teacher. The third occasion, if the Quran is considered a form of dhikr, such as reciting the three Qul Huwallahu Ahad, Qul A'udhu Bil Falaq, Qul A'udhu Bi Rabbin Nas, when you go to bed, reciting Ayatul Kursi when you go to bed. So these are now recited as a form of dhikr. If it was a portion of ayah also recited as a form of dhikr, that should be fine. But just to recite the Quran for the sake of taking the reward, it's not the time for this right now. They can still listen to the recitation of the Quran. They can play the CD and listen to the recitation. They can read tafsir. So as they read the tafsir, which is the commentary on the Quran, they can recite and they can read actually the Arabic, let's say, and as they come across the portion of an ayah, they can still read that as well. They can read the translation in English, and that's fine. Even if they come across a portion from an ayah, they should be fine, they can read that. What they should not be doing is reciting the Quran basically from cover to cover to do the khatma, or reciting surah to surah or pages of the mushaf for the sake of taking the reward of reciting the Quran. That's the time they need to take a break, inshallah, from that and focus on other acts of worship such as dhikr, ibadah, seeking knowledge, and other things, inshallah. Wallahu a'lam. Now.
Is it permissible to have a physical while fasting as well as going to dentist or orthodontist while you're?
That is fine as long as you make sure that nothing goes through down the throat. If you're going to have to do that, you could not delay that appointment until after Ramadan. then in this case, it should be fine. Again, this does not break your fast if nothing goes down your throat. Wallahu a'lam. No.
Does getting on Facebook and reading other people's posts break your fast if it's considered engaging in gossip?
Well, Allah musta'an. I mean, now we have, unfortunately, so many outlets for gossip, la ilaha illallah. And one of them is, yes, just like you said, Twitter and Facebook and MySpace and Your Space and all these things. So if you think that going there is going to make you fall into gossiping other people, talking about others and so on, stay away from them. It does not break your fast. It doesn't break the fast, but it definitely damages your reward. And the Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam says, من لم يدع قول الزور والعمل به فليس لله حاجة أن يدع طعامه وشرابه. If anyone does not abandon or does not quit قول الزور والعمل به, which means vain talk, or in this case like gossip, lying and so on, or even acting upon these things, such as acting in lie and falsehood and so forth, the Prophet says, فَلَيْسَ لِلَّهِ حَاجَةٌ أَنْ يَدَعَ طَعَامَهُ وَشَرَابَهُ. Allah in no need of them quitting their food and drink. Which means, what's the benefit? Still, they need to fast. It doesn't break the actual physical fast, but the reward is kind of damaged big time. Just like in the salah, to take the full reward for the salah, you have to make that khushu' in the salah. Focus and concentrate in your salah. The less concentration you have in your salah, the less reward you get, but you still need to make that salah to count for you. Same thing when it comes to fasting. The more you engage in these kind of things, the less reward you get for your fast. So stay away from these places as much as possible. I know it's addicting, and by the way, you guys might not know that, but now there's a new form of addiction, which is actually internet addiction. When people, they go to these social media and they just keep looking and just keep going back and forth, refreshing the page over and over again, it's a form of addiction. So people need to stay away from that. Wallahu a'lam. Now.
Okay, for the sake of time, I'll just ask two more questions. The first one is a sister who likes to pay her zakat al-fitr during the month of Ramadan, and she's not sure exactly how much that she's had in her savings account from last year because she's been adding to it all year. How does she know exactly how much to take from her for zakat?
Well, she needs to make sure how much she has on there, because that's a huge liability on her. How does she know that? She needs to contact whoever is responsible for her package. Now, putting in a saving account that accrues riba is prohibited in itself. But if this is something that she had to do because of the law, or maybe a specific arrangement that she's obligated to do, in this case, she needs to get rid of the riba. On one side, that's one thing. But then she needs to make sure how much money she has in there, and she calculates the zakat based on that. You calculate your cash money that you have in your hand, in your saving account, in your checking account. You put all this together, and then it becomes like one account. And all of this, if it goes above, if the number or the figure goes above the minimum for obligation of zakah, which is called an-nisab, the threshold of zakah, and this is the value of 85 grams of pure gold, if she has that, which is these days, since the gold is actually very expensive, it's around $3,000 to $4,000. I'm not sure exactly how much would be. So if someone, let's say, has $3,000, $4,000 in their account, and that figure never went down for an entire year. It went up and kept fluctuating, but it never went below that number. Then in this case, after 1 year, she needs to pay 2.5% of that. Wallahu a'lam. Now.
Okay, last question. A sister that I know is pregnant, but she is fasting, and I thought it was not allowed for her to do so. Where in the hadith is it stated that she can fast if she's able to?
I mean, where is the evidence she cannot? In this case, the liability or the obligation is to fast on everybody. If someone wants to change that standard, this is basically the standard default ruling, that you need to fast unless you're traveling, unless you're sick, unless you're unable. So therefore, if she's unable to fast, then she falls under the category of ar-rukhas. She has basically that. So therefore, if you have an excuse to not to fast, you need to make up for those days, inshallah ta'ala. So the one who says that women who are pregnant should fast or can fast is not responsible to provide the evidence, because that's the default ruling, in fasting during the month of Ramadan. But if fasting endangers her life or the life of the child, then in this case, she will fall under the category of maybe an excused person, such as being an illness or maybe being unable to, and so forth. So that's how it is. Wallahu ta'ala. Now.
Jazakallah khair. We have many questions left, but I know for the sake of time and you not feeling well, we want to thank you for taking the time, especially not feeling well. Jazakallah khair.
Barakallahu feekum. Jazakumullah khair. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward you all for coming here and attending. I hope inshallah ta'ala that was beneficial to you and your questions were answered clearly. If there is anything, inshallah, we can do something else in the future. Bidnillahi tabaraka wa ta'ala. Again, Ramadan Mubarak to all of you, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make this a blessed month to you and to your families. One last thing I would like actually to mention, since we're closing right now, inshallah tabaraka wa ta'ala, since we had some questions also about the best time for dua before everybody start leaving the room over here. I want just to remind you that our brothers and sisters in Syria, particularly in Halab, the city of Aleppo, they're actually going through a rough time right now, and they definitely they need every possible dua that we can afford and give them. So I really would like to request from the sisters, inshallah, tabaraka wa ta'ala, to make a special dua for the people of Syria and the people of Damascus and the people of Aleppo, Halab, before they break their fast this night, inshallah, azza wa jal. Also, make sure that you make dua for the people, the Rohingya in Burma, who's not so many people you know about them at all. That may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ease their situation. Alhamdulillah, we live in the comfort of our houses. Look at you. You're just, behind the screen right now and listening to this talk, and alhamdulillah, safe and feeling healthy and wealthy. But these people, only Allah knows what kind of pain they're going through. So the Muslims, as the Prophet ﷺ says, Al-Muslimu lil-Muslim kal-bunyan, the believers are just like the structure. They strengthen one another, and we are just like one body. If one part of our body aches, everybody actually the entire body starts, feeling with it. So we should really feel with them, inshallah, azza wa jal. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward you again for taking the time. And please don't